Okay, good morning, sociology. Since this particular chapter has a lot of theory, has a lot to go through, I'm probably going to split it up into a two-section lecture. So a part one and a part two. I don't know yet as I'm just beginning this, but this week we move on to socialization. This is chapter 5 in our Introduction to Sociology book. You need to make sure when we are discussing socialization, we're not talking about socializing. I know a lot of you might think that that is what we are referring to in sociology when we're talking about socialization, but that is not what we are referring to, and we will find out what exactly we are referring to as I get into this lecture. So again, we are moving on to week 6. This is chapter 5. It is past the exam, and we are on the socialization chapter. So getting right into the lecture, let me share my screen with you guys. Okay, so again, chapter 5 is on socialization. Socialization is the way we learn the norms and beliefs of our society. From our earliest family and play experiences, we are made aware of societal values and expectations. From our earliest experiences with family, play, peers, and education, we learn societal values and the expected behaviors, the accepted assumptions as to how we are to behave in the workplace, at school, in certain social settings. Okay? So again, this is a figure pulled right out from chapter 5. And again, pause at figures, really think about them. Okay? When we go over the definition of socialization, when on the next slide, go back to this picture. Okay? Think of the ways that you were socialized. Think of the ways that you still are being socialized. Socialization is a process that is never ending. Okay? We are constantly learning expectations. We are always learning how to behave in certain settings, what is expected of us in certain settings, etc. If any of you have ever started a new job, if some of you are starting new jobs, you are currently going through a socialization process. But before I get into that, let me get into the bulk of this stuff so you guys can understand. Okay? So what is socialization? Socialization is the process through which people are taught to be proficient members of society. It describes the ways that people come to understand societal norms and expectations, to accept society's beliefs, and to be aware of societal values. Socialization and socializing are not the same. When we are referring to socialization, we are specifically referring to a learning process, okay? A learning process that involves us being taught and us learning society's beliefs, societal values, expectations, and the various norms, right? The laws, the folkways, and the mores. There is an ongoing process and constant of learning, in a constant way of learning the ways of one's culture. And it's through socialization, again, the socialization process. Again, we are going to learn norms through socialization processes. We are going to learn values, assumptions, and expectations. If these terms are not clear to you yet, make sure they become clear to you while reading this chapter, okay? Again, go back to our definition of norms in the culture chapter, in chapter 3, okay? Go back to our definition of values in chapter 3. Assumptions and expectations, all found in chapter 3, as well as in chapter 4, and in this chapter, okay? So make sure you always go back. In fact, I think I'm just going to define them now as we are on this PowerPoint. So again, what are norms? Remember that norms are the visible and invisible rules through which society is constructed, right? The visible, and your book specifically defines it as the visible and invisible rules of conduct through which societies are structured. That's not to be twisted or interchangeable between values. Remember, values from our culture chapter. Values are the culture's standards for discerning what's good and what's just in society. Okay? And then as well, go over assumptions and expectations. Those can be found in this chapter as well as in chapter 3 and 4. Okay. These are baby rhesus monkeys. Like humans, they need to be raised with societal contact for healthy development. The reason why this particular figure is in our chapter, remember that our chapter also includes a story about a detective and a girl named Danielle, okay? And Danielle grew up in a really kind of volatile, kind of unsafe environment, right? To the point when the police came into wherever Danielle was located. Danielle, you know, could speak, she could talk, she could follow directions, but she couldn't make eye contact with people. Again, when she would answer the detective, her eyes would remain staring down at the ground, okay? However, in American society today, right, if I am going to meet up with one of you guys, if one of you guys are my friends, if I'm with my friends, if I'm with my family, I'm talking to you with my eyes in your eyes, and it's not like stare down, but it's really a sign of, at least to me, a sign of respect. Okay, I want you to know that I'm speaking to you. I want you to know, if my eyes are in your eyes, that I'm hearing you. I want you to know that whatever you're saying is important to me. So my eyes are in your eyes, okay? So we're gonna talk about social contact, social interactions, and how those also influence one's socialization, okay? So again, keep in mind Detective Holster and Danielle, that story in chapter 5, okay? Again, as usual, we are going to learn the importance of the complex process of socialization and how it takes place through interactions with many individuals, groups, and social institutions. As I said, the first 4 chapters were foundational, right? They're the basics, okay? From chapter 5 on, everything starts blending together and we build on top of that, okay? So again, you know what groups are. Social institutions, you have to keep those in mind. Remember the 5 basic institutions, social institutions we can find in every single society? Those are family, that's the family, religion, education, economy, and the state. Okay? They're not the same in every single society, but those structures, those institutions are found in every single society that we know of. Okay? We're also going to explore how socialization is not only critical to children as they develop, but how it is also a lifelong process through which we become prepared for new social environments and expectations in every stage of our lives. Okay? So we're gonna start off with some theory, okay? So I'm gonna go over every section of the textbook, the chapter with you, but I'm jumping, okay? So we're gonna cover, I believe, the theory first and then go back to some other things, right? But let's talk about the nature versus nurture debate, okay? This debate is over whether nature, also known as biology, genes, and evolution, or nurture, and we're talking about socialization, explains the self and all human behaviors. Some experts assert that who we are is a result of nurture. So some experts are going to say that we become who we are because of the relationships around us and people who care about us that surround us. Others argue that who we are is based entirely in genetics. According to this belief, our temperaments, interests, and talents are set before birth. It's in the blood, okay? Sociobiology, evolutionary psychology, in other words, is a biodeterminist theory that claims our genetic makeup wires us for certain social behaviors that we may have, okay? I will tell you here that sociology and biology do not really get along in the sciences, okay? And a lot of it goes back into history. History is very, very important. Remember, the reason why we use the sociological imagination. We can't approach everything from our own personal perspectives, our own personal lives, because history matters. There are things that go on historically before we were born and in the current that we cannot control. And we need to make sure we know and we are aware of those processes. Okay? So sociology and biology oftentimes won't go together hand in hand. And the reason is because biology has been used to harm a lot of different populations. Okay? Biology has been, I'm not bashing biology right now. Biology is very, very important. I'm glad I can go to the doctors and get checked up as a woman. There are certain types of checkups I need as a woman. And without biology, without anatomy, there are certain things that I wouldn't be aware of. Okay, so I don't want to get too personal, but I found lumps in my breast 2 summers ago. Okay, without biology and without, people understanding that sometimes there are certain types of cancers that can be passed down from mother to daughter to daughter to son, right? I wouldn't be as cautious as I am right now. So when I found those lumps, I was immediately like, oh my gosh, let me go check this out immediately. And on top of that, it is Breast Cancer Awareness Month. So make sure if you are a guy, you have titties too, okay? I shouldn't say titties, but you have breasts, you have a chest, get them checked out. Make sure you know how to check yourselves out. And these are things that you should be doing before the age of 40, okay? I was checking my boobs at 18, okay? So that's just a side note. But biology is important for those reasons. There's also reasons that there are certain illnesses that can be passed down or that are more common, not passed down, but are more common in different types of ethnicities. And I'm saying ethnicities on purpose, okay? Because race and ethnicity are different, okay? Sickle cell anemia is oftentimes found in Africans. Okay, so, okay, there is a higher chance that I might, be affected by sickle cell. I'm not, but there are certain illnesses that are found in certain types of ethnicities. And I'm thankful for biology because there are medicines, there are therapeutics, etc. Okay. However, biology has also been used negatively. Okay. It's not well. So sociobiology, going back into sociobiology, It's not well accepted by most sociologists, still to this day. Okay, and it's greatly abused in 1850. Think about social Darwinism, think about Charles Darwin, all the way to 1945, and we're talking about fascism. I know you guys hear a lot about fascism today, okay? And we're gonna go over those definitions, okay? Because a lot of you guys, a lot of people don't know what fascism is, don't know what socialism is, don't know what communism is. And it's strange because we live in a time where we have Google right here, right? And it's actually very frustrating. So, sorry, it's very frustrating when people will just be like, you know, this person's a fascist, this person's a Marxist, this person's a socialist, etc. Okay? And then I throw the question at them, like, can you define those for me, please? Like, what's your definition of those? And silence. A lot of people talk out from their, you know what? Don't be one of those people. Don't be one of those people, okay? And we're gonna go over them. But for now, because we're just in chapter 5, we're talking about socialization. If you don't know what these are, Google them, okay? So biology has been used also to abuse people. Biology has been used against people who are twins, people who are of different races, against women's bodies, okay? Against people of different sexual orientations, against people of different gender identities, okay? And I would say even till this day, biology is abused sometimes, depending on who that individual is, okay? So the nature versus nurture debate. Before I move on to the next slide, where do you guys think? What do you guys think? You know, can we explain the reason why we are more so through biology or more so through socialization? As a sociologist, I will say that personally, through my education, through my own experiences, through using the sociological imagination, we are more influenced by nurture, okay? So our environments, our institutions, our families, our peers, our work, the state, religion, heavily socializes us, okay? And I'm going to explain why, okay? So identical twins, another figure from chapter 5. Identical twins may look alike, but their differences can give us clues to the effects of socialization and how they are socialized. And again, there's certain gray like story areas in your chapter, and you do encounter a story about a set of twins. Okay, socialization in the social world. For most of our experiences, they are part of our socialization experience. Socialization can happen on 3 different levels: micro levels, meso levels, and macro levels. When we're talking about socialization at the micro level, we're talking about socialization that occurs between parents, between peers and friends. When we're talking about socialization that happens at the meso level, we're talking about socialization that happens within schools, within religious organizations, within clubs, within sports teams, etc. This is at the meso level. When we talk about socialization that happens at the macro level, we're talking about socialization that occurs via the media, via national advertisements, okay? Organizations and institutions, so we're talking about meso level and up, okay? Organizations and institutions are dependent upon socialized people to help them persist. So these organizations such as schools, boot camps, institutions such as internships, churches, etc. Schools is repeated there, I have no idea what, but my bad. But these institutions, these systems are dependent upon us being socialized to keep them going. Keep that in mind, okay? Now getting into theories. So the nature versus nurture is kind of the theory, but now getting into the solid theories of socialization in the self. The first one, and I hope, I have like a huge bar across my screen. I hope you guys don't see it. So the first one, let me just push this down. Okay, so it's here. The self and socialization. The first theory is by Charles Horton Cooley, and we're going to go over his theory of the looking glass self. Charles Horton Cooley says that we learn who we are by interacting with others, okay? The looking glass self, which is coined by him, is the self, so us, we are a product, our identities are a product of social interactions with other people. What does that mean, okay? And before you move on, I actually want you to pause here. Read that again to yourself. The looking glass self. The self is a product of social interactions with other people. Okay? Are you a product of the interactions, the experiences that you have had with other people throughout your life? Pause and think about that. Have any of you guys ever heard the saying, and some of your parents, my mom used to always say this, my dad always used to say this, you are who you hang out with. Especially when they thought I was hanging out with somebody I shouldn't have been hanging out with. Okay? Pause and just think about this looking glass self. Is this true to you? Okay? Is this true to you? Cooley argued that during interactions, humans serve as mirrors for one another. Our view of ourselves comes from not only our contemplation of personal qualities, but also from our impression of how others perceive us. We base our perception of who we are on how we think other people see us and on whether that opinion seems good or bad to us. So this is what he's going to say that we do, okay? We imagine how we appear to others. So we imagine how we appear to others. We interpret how others judge that appearance and then respond to that interpretation through behavior. So how those individuals judge our appearance, we're going to respond to that interpretation that they have of us through a change in our behavior. So for example, for any of you people who like to, I know it's COVID, for any of you guys who like to go out on the town on a Friday night, you're getting dressed up, you're going out with the guys, you're going out with the girls, okay? And you leave the house and you're like, wow, I'm fresh. I got some nice kicks. I got a nice dress. You know, my makeup is on point. And then you walk, you know, into the club and you meet up with your friends. And you have that one friend or you have those friends who look you up and down. And you just know that look is like, that look is probably just saying like, yo, girl, you left the house looking like that, maybe you shouldn't have. Charles Cooley will say, based on that interpretation, based on that look, that we just received from our friends, some of us might actually go back home and change. Some of us might actually experience feelings of pride or shame. Okay? We experience feelings of pride or shame based on this imagined appearance and judgment by others. And then we respond based on our interpretation. Okay? What do you guys think about that? Pause and think about the looking glass self. Is this true? Because if it's true, or if it's, and I'm not saying it's fact, right? But for many of us, this could be, the looking glass itself could be an experience that we experience often. For instance, it's an example. I know that when I'm going out with my partner, and I'm gonna be honest, I need to look good. So my hair is not gonna be up in puffs like this. It might be put up in like a singular puff. It might be braided, etc. But I'm gonna make sure I look nice. Because I don't want, it's weird. I don't want him to look bad, and I don't want myself to look bad. I'm gonna ask you this question and I'm gonna move on. Do you care what others think? I know a lot of you will say, you know what, I don't care. But I guarantee you in certain, situations, in certain contexts, you do. Because if you're going in for an interview for a job, you care. If you're going out to meet a potential date, you care. Okay? If somebody's failing the class and you're about to meet me to discuss how you can get extra credit or how you could do something over, I know you better care. Okay, when grandma's coming to visit, you might care, or mom might make you care. Dad might make you care. Auntie might make you care. Your guardian might make you care. Okay? Think about it. Do we care what people think? Because, again, Charles Cooley will say that we learn who we are, again, by interacting with others. Okay, that's the looking glass self. Okay, moving on to George Herbert Mead. He should sound familiar. Remember, the symbolic interactionist perspective, that's him. Okay, he's most known, again, symbolic interactionist perspective, of course he's known for that, but he's also known for the significant and generalized others. So Mead focuses on the self, again, which Cooley was focused on. Mead focuses on the self, which is a person's distinct identity that is developed through social interaction. According to Mead, in the early months of life, children do not realize that they are separate from others. In other words, children do not realize that they are someone different than their guardians. They believe that they and their guardians are essentially the same. Shortly after birth, and we're going to continue on with that because it might sound weird for some of you, but for some of you who have younger siblings, specifically siblings under the age of 5, what we're about to go over might actually make more sense to you guys, okay? But shortly after birth, infants start to face, sorry, my face is in the way. Shortly after birth, infants start to notice the faces of those around them. Gradually, infants, toddlers, us, we distinguish ourselves from our caregivers and begin to perceive ourselves in contrast to them. However, when we begin to represent ourselves in our own minds as objects distinct from everything else, our self has been formed. Let me read that again. When we begin to represent ourselves in our own minds as objects distinct from everything else, our self has been formed. But this happens through stages, okay? So let's go through the stages. And these stages, again, they're in your book. The first stage, let me just put my face down in this corner and I hope it doesn't cover anything out. The first stage, Mead's stages of the self. The first stage is the preparatory stage. At this stage, children imitate people around them, okay? The ages in the preparatory stage, 0 to 3 years old, okay? So children are gonna imitate the people around them. They're going to imitate these people through symbols. Symbols are what? Symbols are gestures, they're objects and words that form the basis of human communication, okay? So up to about the age of 3, kids will mimic social roles. Children will imitate significant others, okay? And what are significant others according to Mead? You can find that out in the textbook. However, think about it. What is a significant other? Children are going to imitate significant others. So again, significant others, just in case, this was actually defined in chapter 1. Again, these chapters are coming back together. Significant others are those specific persons that impact someone's life. In this specific context, a significant other is who? It could be mom. It could be dad. It could be a guardian of some sort. And I'm using guardian as all inclusive. Okay? So children will imitate significant others. They do not yet have a sense of self at this stage. Okay? So for those of you who have siblings, maybe like younger cousins, or have godchildren between the ages of 0 and 3, the significant other that they are most in contact with at that time, at that age, okay? Do they imitate them? Okay? My niece is now 6. So she's not in the preparatory stage right now. She's in a different stage. But when she was in the preparatory stage, she would imitate everything that her mother did. And I'm saying her mother, not that the dad was not in the picture. The father is still in the picture. It's just that, again, if we're being real, right? The mother is the source of food, breastfeeding. Mom was also a stay-at-home mom while dad was at work. So the significant other in this sense was my sister. And so Alicia, my niece, would imitate and all the other nieces after that, they imitated everything that she did. Everything, okay? From her reactions, etc. Okay? Again, from 0 to 3, they do not yet have a sense of self separate from others. There is no distinct self between her and the significant other, or him and the significant other, or them and the significant other, okay? The second stage is the play stage, okay? At this stage, children develop skills in communicating through symbols and role-taking. Role-taking is the process of mentally assuming the perspective of another and responding from that imagined viewpoint. So the play stage happens between the ages of 3 and 5. So at this stage, kids are in what? Most kids in the United States are in daycare, okay? So role-taking is happening during, playtime, during recess. We had a place called the Tot Lot, which was just like a field where, I used to live in Cambridge, Massachusetts, where we just kind of like played like cops and robbers, good guy, bad guy, etc. But when you take that perspective of, let's say, a bad guy, right, you're also responding from that person's viewpoint, that imagined viewpoint, okay? So if I'm the bad guy, there are bad roles that I need to take, okay? Children learn at this, again, this is the play stage. Children learn to use language and other symbols which enable them to imitate the actions of others. They learn the roles, not just their significant other, but other roles such as the role of the parent, the role of the teacher, the role of schoolmates. The child at this stage is capable only of play and cannot yet engage in organized activity. So again, this is from about the age of 3 and 5. For those of you who are taking Psych 101, these stages are different, so do not confuse your Psych 101 stages with Mead's stages of development, okay? Sociology, psychology, different, okay? So at this stage, again, just to reiterate, the play stage, our identities, I'm just pretending I'm, somebody between the age of 3 and 5. I'm still not separate from my significant other. So from my mom, okay? However, I have learned the roles that my mom can complete, as well as, because I'm in daycare, the role of the teacher, the role of my schoolmates, etc. It's not all organized, it's still all crazy, but I can take those roles and I can respond like them. So at this stage, some of you might have had kitchen sets or barbecue sets at home when you were young, or have nieces and nephews and siblings who have like little cooking things, and they will respond from that perspective. Auntie Sheila, you want to, play cooking and cleaning with me? And then my niece will pretend she's baking like my mom, or cooking like my mom, or cooking like her mom, okay? And they're responding from that perspective. Their identity, they haven't yet formed a self yet. They do not know themselves yet, which again is different from psychology. But at the third stage, this is the game stage. This begins early in the school years. So after daycare, you're now in preschool. Children understand not only their own social position, but also the positions of others around them. At this stage, things are organized when it comes to play. You are working on when it comes to teams. The significance for the self is that to play these games, the individual must be able to take up multiple roles. So here at the game stage, right, they understand the repercussions of their behavior and the effects of those behaviors on others. They can also anticipate the actions of the significant and generalized others. And again, the generalized others, so it's not an actual person or persons, but the generalized others are the attitudes, the viewpoints, and the expectations of society as a whole that a child takes into account. So at the game stage, this is the third stage, now they have separated themselves from the significant other, okay? So now they can understand that, mom is mom, dad is dad, my friends are my friends, my teacher is my teacher. I am my own being, and my behavior can affect me, but it will affect other people in different ways as well. okay? Also, it's important to go along and continuing on with Mead, the phases of the self, the I, and the me, okay? So, at this stage, right, you are also developing an I and a me. Again, these get more refined the older that we get, okay? The I, okay? This is the self in the moment. This is you in the moment. This is the spontaneous, the impulsive side of you. It's the non-reflective side of you, okay? It's the part of the self that produces individuality. So this is the self that really doesn't think. This is the, not that the self doesn't think, but the I doesn't think. This is the side that will get a call on the phone saying that you just won $1 million. Send me your bank account information and I'll deposit it. And the I is like, sure, my bank account number is blah, blah, blah. That's the part that's just impulsive, it's spontaneous. It's the side of you that when your friends come over at like maybe 11 p.m. at night and say like, let's go, we're going to the beach, we're gonna have a bonfire, and you're like, I'm there, okay? That's the I. The me, and we have both of these sides in us, guys, okay? The me is the self as an object in the world. It's the structured and the determinate part of the self. It's a product of interaction and conscious reflection, okay? The me is the part of ourselves that thinks before we do, okay? This guy really just hit up my phone and said, all I need to do is give him my bank account information and he will deposit $1 million in my bank account. The me is going to be like, hold up. I didn't sign up for anything. I didn't give my number anywhere. Who is this person? And I should actually never give my bank account information over the phone, okay? The me is the part that when your friends come over at 11 p.m. at night and say, come on, we're headed to the beach, there's a bonfire. The me is like, yo, I want to go, but maybe I should ask my parents. And even if my parents tell me I can go, maybe I should tell them exactly where I'm going to be, who I'm going with, and also make sure I give them, all the phone numbers of the people I'm around. Okay? It's the conscious part of us, okay? We know the I only through the me, okay? Lastly, before I end this specific section of the video, let's go into the perspectives. How would a functionalist view socialization? Okay? The functionalist perspective says that different socializing agents support one another. This will create social harmony and it creates social order. Remember, the functionalist is all about equilibrium, things in order. People want to remain in harmony. Okay, so different socializing agents, and we will get into the agents, right? But in broad terms, the agents are family, religion, education, economy, the state, okay? There are institutions, just if you guys didn't realize that, okay? So they will say, different socializing agents support one another. So for instance, let's use the example of bullying, okay? You are in college. No, you are in high school and you're getting bullied, okay? Who do you go to first, okay? People will say, go to your teacher. And if your teacher doesn't do anything, go to your professor or go to your principal, okay? The principal doesn't do anything, right? What's a different agent, socializing agent that you can go to? Okay, my teacher's not handling it, the principal's not handling it, let me go to my parents. Let me go to my guardian, okay? My guardian's then gonna come into the school, gonna talk with the teacher, gonna talk with the principal, okay? and things better solve themselves out. Okay? And because things have gotten so crazy in the United States, sometimes you can go further than that. For those of you who weren't aware, Connecticut has the strictest laws on bullying. So when the teacher does nothing, the principal does nothing, and you go to the different socializing agents such as your parents, and they do nothing, the state can work its magic, okay? But ultimately, at the end, different socializing agents, so family, education, the state, in our example of bullying, are supposed to support one another. Eventually, things will be solved. That bullying situation will be solved, okay? There's going to be social order. That's the functionalist perspective. The conflict perspective, on the other hand, says different socializing agents, so the family is different from the school's different from the state's different from religion, etc., have conflicting goals. This creates social conflict, and eventually, through social conflict, comes social change. So let's still use the example of bullying, okay? Now, we all come from different backgrounds, different ethnicities, different household makeups. Some of us had parents that were older, some of us had parents that were younger, okay? So when it comes to bullying, you know, the school tells us what? Go to the teacher, go to the principal, they'll handle it, okay? But we come from different families, like I said. Some of our families say, you know, handle it. If somebody's bullying you, you handle it. I came from one of those households. You know, there's no crying in this household. You know, if you come here crying right now, you're gonna get it. You better handle that bully. Okay? And then religion will tell you another thing, right? Religion might tell you to turn the other cheek. Religion may tell you to greet that bully in kindness. 3 different agents of socialization are telling you different things. This creates conflict from the conflict perspective. Eventually, there is so much conflict, there is so much friction that social change has to happen. And that social change happens through protest. It can happen through riots. It can happen through killing. It can happen through peace. Okay? Think about it. Also, to take into consideration, those who have power use socialization to manipulate others into supporting the power structure that benefits the elite. Remember in our society and social interactions chapter, the false consciousness, okay? Ultimately, when it comes to the conflict perspective, right, Karl Marx would say that many of us have to deal with this false consciousness where we think that, you know, we are supporting ourselves, but in reality, we are supporting a social structure. We are supporting laws and policies. We are supporting these institutions that only benefit those in power. Okay? The false consciousness falls upon us who are subordinate when it comes to like social stratification. Most of us. Okay? Most individuals have very little power to decide or control their futures. It's not so. So this doesn't always have to be true if you are organized and mobilized for collective action. Okay? This is the class consciousness in chapter 4 that our author was talking about. So I'm going to end there, and I will be back with another lecture on the same chapter, but it's going to be a lot quicker, on the agents of socialization. And again, those agents of socialization are family, religion, education, economy, and the state, as well as media. So we tack on another one. Sound good? So I'll be back.